on the American continent, including the Caribbean, we cannot ignore the link that exists between the illicit trafficking of drugs and the illicit trafficking of small arms and light weapons, weapons which represent a significant threat for the bodies that have to implement the law. Mr. President, in order to address transnational threats, including drug trafficking, trafficking in persons, or the illegal exploitation of natural resources, it is indispensable to stop the illicit financial flows and the illicit trafficking in small arms and light weapons. The inability to put an end to the former has been one of the causes why the organized crime groups have been increasing their capacity for action and thus increasing violence and insecurity. States must get to the bottom of the use of financial intelligence and legal processes such as in order to address the patrimonial and financial structure of organized crime groups. It's also important that we fight corruption, and therefore crucial that there be implementation of the convention of this organization on anti-corruption that was signed in my country, Mexico, in 2003. With regard to drug trafficking, we are convinced that we will only be able to effectively address this problem through the combination of prevention and action that will place the individual at the heart of our public policy, including prevention activities amongst young people, also the manufacturing issue, the trafficking, and also distribution in the major consumption markets. This is where the major profits of this illicit trade are made. The government of Mexico, of my country, is participating in this debate with the firm conviction that the entire international community must address the structural causes of violence and crime by adopting an integrated and complementary approach between the policies that relate to crime prevention and criminal justice and those which aim to produce sustainable development in its three dimensions: economic, social, and environmental. Thank you very much.
Agradezco a la representante.
I thank the representative of Mexico for her statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Morocco.
Vous remercie, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President. Morocco welcomes the convening of today's very important Security Council debate under the distinguished presidency and the friendly presidency of Ecuador. We applaud the presence this morning of His Excellency, the President of Ecuador, Kira Semedoda, and the discussion. And we welcome the presence of the Executive Director of UNODC, as well as other briefers for their informative statements. Over the past 2 decades, the universalization of the Palermo Convention has advanced the ratification by 192 state parties, including Morocco. The convention not only resulted in legislative convergence throughout the world, but also helped to shore up the bilateral and regional normative framework in the area of judicial and police cooperation, while providing a robust bedrock for capacity building. However, 2 observations warrant our attention. The first is that of transnational organized crime, which is adapting. Criminal networks are evolving as we mobilize ourselves, and they are escaping our vigilance. The malicious use of improved mobility, expansion of international trade and technology development, ICT and communications development has been exploited by them. And transnational organized cross-border crime is globalizing while enhancing its regional roots. In many parts of the world, links between conflict, trafficking, and organized crime are almost systematic in nature. In Africa, we condemn the proven link between criminal groups, terrorist groups, and separatist groups. Morocco would mention the fact that the fight against such crime requires 1, reinforcement of rule of law, 2, capacity building of law enforcement, and 3, ensuring that public bodies' capacities to counter corruption is enhanced, 4, the advancement of good offices of UNODC and regional offices in order to better advance coordination and cooperation among member states, specifically when it comes to exchange of good information, best practices, and of course the promotion of security-level cooperation to tackle transnational challenges posed by crime. Mr. President, Morocco plays a leading role at the regional and international levels to prevent and to counteract crime in all of its manifestations, to establish criminal justice based on respect and enforcement of international norms. I wish to highlight 4 elements as follows. First, the Kingdom of Morocco attributes a paramount priority to countering terrorism. We have a national, regional, and international policies to counter this scourge and financing thereof through an approach that is based on cooperation, exchange of information, exchange of best practices. This resulted in a number of counterterrorism projects in a number of countries thanks to cooperation with Morocco. Second, the Kingdom of Morocco attributes a crucial importance to countering corruption, specifically through operationalization of legal counter organized crime mechanisms to counter these and ensure strict enforcement of the law. We have also ratified the UNCA and the UN African Counter-Corruption Convention. We have made prevention, countering the use of drugs and psychotropic substances in the international and national level a national priority. We have adopted a comprehensive, multidimensional, and integrated strategy, and this has been applauded throughout the international community and competent international UN bodies. We have also adopted tireless efforts to counter trafficking in persons, including by the establishment of National 2023 to 2026 Plan and a National 2023 to 2030 plan. These efforts are geared towards the establishment of a national mechanism to establish protection for victims. Mr. President, our Kingdom of Morocco, during the 91st session of the General Assembly of Interpol, held recently in Vienna, to host the session of the General Assembly of Interpol, the next one to be held in 2025 in Morocco. This reflects the respect, the trust, and appreciation which the Kingdom of Morocco and its security institutions enjoy under the stewardship of His Majesty the King. In the same vein, we are currently hosting a session of Arab leaders and of police and security forces. This is an opportunity to discuss, among other things, the use of modern technologies in countering terrorism, violent extremism, as well as transnational organized crime. To conclude, Mr. President, my delegation underscores the need to shore up collective efforts of the international community in order to better advance the establishment of international and regional security that is based on mutual respect, good neighborly relations, and effective and efficient cooperation. Thank you.
Agradezco al representante de
I thank the representative of Morocco for his statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Chile.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Chile would like to thank Ecuador for having convened this open debate, and we take note of the briefings and contributions that we have heard. We wish Ecuador every success during your monthly presidency of this organ. There can be no doubt that transnational organized crime is one of the most serious problems that the international community is experiencing today, and an important threat to international peace and security, which undoubtedly disproportionately affects women and girls. We believe that the current international model of organized crime has 3 fundamental dynamics to it with regard to stages which preceded this phenomenon. It is operational at the global level, it has extensive transnational links, and above all, it has the capacity to challenge national and international authority. Given that global context, in order to fight in transnational organized crime, we need to have more and better international cooperation links, strengthened commitment multilaterally and regionally. That in order to facilitate the effective exchange of information for prevention, pursuit, and prosecution of those that participate in these criminal activities, and strengthen the control capacities and detection capacities at the borders. Another concern which must be addressed is that the criminal groups that are involved in organized crime very often need to reinvest their earnings in the purchase of property and goods in order to hide its illicit origins, known as money laundering, which means significant risk for the financial systems of the countries involved, and which makes more complicated the criminal investigation being carried out by the prosecuting authorities. And this income can then be channeled towards extra-regional entities in order to fund terrorism. Corruption can be considered as a basic crime of transnational organized crime because, to a greater or lesser extent, it's part of all crimes associated with this phenomenon, such as the payment of hush money to public officials, bribery, influence peddling, or facilitating the laundering of ill-gotten gains, or even the obtaining of classified information. We are aware that the crimes and level of violence associated with this have such an impact that they not only create concern and fear in the population, but also lead to loss of life and lead to doubts in the legitimacy and effectiveness of democracy and the state and its institutions. Mr. President, for Latin America, this is an ongoing concern because it is strongly linked to drug trafficking. Other criminal activities include trafficking in arms, trafficking in persons, smuggling, the illicit trafficking in migrants. These actions create a transcendental impact on the public safety of countries in the region and undermine human development, governance and democracy. We would like to take this opportunity in order to once again recall the upheaval that this phenomenon has created in Haiti. There is data that supports the view that terrorism has strong links to organized crime, particularly because of the important source of financing represented by drug trafficking. I'd like to briefly refer to the international cooperation program between Latin America and the European Union, known as Assistance Against Transnational Organized Crime, which aims to contribute to the security and justice in Latin America through the support of the European Union to fighting transnational organized crime. This program led to the Latin American Committee for Interior Security initiative that aims to pool efforts between countries of Latin America to coordinate our work to link together security policies and define joint strategies to face organized crime. This is an essential forum for high-level dialogue between Latin America and the European Union when it comes to security. We've seen that next year Ecuador will be assuming the presidency of this committee, and of course we'd like to take this opportunity to wish you every success in the work to be carried out, and you can count on the support of my country for that. Mr. President, in conclusion, allow me to share with you the efforts of my country, Chile, in this area, and witness to the importance that this has for our rule of law. The Ministry of the Interior and Public Security of Chile last December launched the first national policy against organized crime, a coordinated effort proactively bringing together 17 public institutions which play a leading role in fighting crime. Its main goal is to break up criminal gangs and organizations and weaken their financial and economic power. Specifically, it aims to update the standards for prosecuting this crime, the capacity of the police, and the tools available to institutions working in the area of security. Thank you very much, Mr. President. I thank the representative of Chile for her statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Denmark.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have the honor to deliver this statement on behalf of the Nordic countries, Finland, Iceland, Norway, Sweden, and my own country, Denmark. We thank Ecuador for convening this open debate, as well as our briefers today for their important interventions. Transnational organized crime and political economy of conflict are closely linked. Opportunities for criminal enrichment often spur the onset of resumptions of hostilities, frequently over illicit drugs or natural resources. Even when that is not the case, conflicts attract criminal actors. Conflict actors need money and resources to sustain their ability to fight. Criminal activity provides that. Moreover, criminal actors are often based in neighboring countries, regionalizing conflicts and spreading their destabilizing effects across borders. We must curb transnational organized crime, both in the conflict zones and beyond. We, the Nordic countries, take this opportunity to highlight two key issues that should guide the multilateral approach. First, because transnational organized crime in conflict is a question of political economy, the response should be tailored accordingly. It must be comprehensive, and due consideration should be given to diplomatic, development, justice, anti-corruption, and security measures. To tailor the response, the international community needs to know more about the transnational criminal networks and how to contribute to the spread of terrorism and fueling of conflict dynamics. On this note, We commend the work of the panels of experts and the monitoring team for relevant UN sanctions regimes for their valuable contributions. We would like to see this international oversight strengthened. Furthermore, we encourage improved coordination and enhanced partnership between all UN entities, preferably through an even more effective United Nations Interagency Task Force on Policing. That said, local voices are often best situated to identify criminal networks and illicit trade flows, and they should be included in the work to hold criminals accountable. Activists and civil society groups can inform and support efforts to tackle the impact of crime on conflict. These are brave individuals who put themselves at risk in order to call out and combat criminal activity. Their protection must be ensured. Our second point is that the approach to transnational organized crime must be guided by the core UN values of human rights, good governance, and the rule of law. The majority of victims of both crime and conflict are civilians who are extorted, trafficked, kidnapped, and become casualties in fighting over the exploits of criminal activity. In addition, many low-level actors in transnational organized crime never wanted to be criminals. Poverty drives some of them to make unsociable choices. Others are pressured, some at gunpoint, to participate in criminal activity. Our approach to transnational organized crime should distinguish between crimes as subsistence and crime as a means to sustain conflict. We must provide economic development to offer better livelihood alternatives, in addition to improving governance and law enforcement. Mr. President, in conclusion, we must take a comprehensive and multilateral approach to transnational organized crime and its causes and effects on international peace and security. We must enhance the work of the United Nations Interagency Task Force on Policing. Those who speak up should be supported and protected. And finally, we can only tackle the root causes if we remain true to our values, ensure economic development, and strengthen the rule of law. I thank you.
Agradezco a la...
I thank the representative of Denmark for her statement. I now give the floor to the representative of South Africa.
Thank you, Mr. President. South Africa would like to thank Ecuador for convening this important open debate on the challenges posed by transnational organized crime to international peace and security. We also appreciate the insightful briefings on global trends concerning transnational criminal networks and the role of transnational organized crime in sustaining armed conflict, terrorism, corruption, and compromising the rule of law. The cross-cutting nature of transnational organized crime, fueled by, amongst others, illicit drug trafficking, human trafficking, illicit financial flows, cybercrime, and terrorism, amongst others, present a major threat to the international community with devastating social and economic implications. This position is amplified in the 2023 UNODC report within the framework of the world crime trends and emerging issues and responses in the fields of crime prevention and criminal justice, with a focus on homicide, human trafficking, and solicitation of bribes. Mr. President, there's broad recognition that in some situations, transnational organized crime perpetuates armed conflicts and terrorism through illicit arms trafficking and channeling illicit proceeds of crime to terrorists and non-state armed actors. This is evident from the 2023 UNODC Transnational Organized Crime Threat Assessment in the Sahel, which shows that transnational organized crime can provide a source of funding and logistical assistance to terrorist groups. For this reason, South Africa supports calls for enhancing regional, sub-regional, and international cooperation, with a view to accelerating the implementation of our international commitments in line with the primary responsibility of member states to build and maintain peace and security. We also stand ready to work with other member states towards the identification of trends and addressing gaps and effectively preventing and countering challenges posed by transnational organized crime and its links to fueling terrorism and the destabilization of peace and security throughout the world. Mr. President, the rise in illegal mining activities perpetrated by both local and cross-border criminal syndicates brings with it various other secondary offenses, such as human trafficking and funding of gang wars. Equally, gang wars have resurfaced in the area of wildlife crimes, such as rhino poaching and other certain species of wild flora and fauna. In this regard, South Africa appreciates the support of the UNODC Regional Office for Southern Africa for the technical assistance and capacity building provided through the various training and research programs which inform the development of policies and legislation aimed at curbing this scourge. In conclusion, Mr. President, whilst it's prudent to pay particular attention to the linkages between transnational organized crime and terrorism, including eroding peace and stability, we encourage member states to curb this scourge in a holistic manner that entails eradicating any form of cooperation, coexistence, and convergence amongst these criminal groups, as well as dismantling criminal networks. We are convinced that these efforts will make a meaningful contribution towards the attainment of SDG 16, which commits us to promote peaceful and inclusive societies with sustainable development, provide access to justice for all, and build effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions at all levels. I thank you, Mr. President.
Agradezco al representante.
I'd like to thank the representative of South Africa for his statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Italy.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you for organizing this very important and timely meeting. Italy has always attached the greatest importance to international cooperation in the fight against transnational organized crime, and this year is no different. We strongly support the Omnibus Crime Resolution, which reaffirms the centrality of the United Nations Programme on Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice, including its capacity for technical cooperation. The third committee adopted the resolution by consensus, and it was co-sponsored by 85 member states. The resolution builds on the last year's text and takes stock of new developments in the field of multilateral cooperation, including those related to the substantial results achieved by the Commission on Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice in Vienna, and in particular, the 5 resolutions that will be adopted by the General Assembly within a few days. We also welcome the fact that the text of the resolution includes new language that strengthens the role of youth crime prevention policies, the protection of the environment, and the importance of effectively combating the scourge of sexual exploitation and abuse of children. This should be considered a new frontier in the fight against such crimes. We are also pleased that the text under consideration strengthens the role of UNODC in the implementation of its mandate under the resolution on important issues such as access to legal aid, anti-corruption measures, crime prevention, and technical assistance policies related to youth and counter-terrorism. Mr. President, with regard to the question raised in the concept note, Italy would like to stress the importance of police and judicial cooperation. It is crystal clear that organized crime always has a transnational dimension and that an effective fight against it should hinge on 2 elements. First, legal instruments that streamline cooperation and guarantee the admissibility in national proceedings of evidence gathered abroad. Second, the creation of specialized units capable of using state-of-the-art instruments to detect and investigate organized criminal groups. In this context, I would like to emphasize the importance of joint investigation teams whose support is crucial when parallel proceedings relating to the same crime are ongoing. The legal basis for this instrument is Article 19 of the Palermo Convention. At the regional level, however, other binding agreements provide for potential setup of joint investigation teams as well. Finally, allow me to mention that we are celebrating an anniversary these days. The Palermo Convention entered into force 20 years ago and is still considered the most effective international legal tool in combating organized crime. We need to continue to work for its full implementation as well as a full and effective implementation of its protocols, especially those concerning the trafficking in persons and the smuggling of migrants. We believe that further ratifications and accessions to these protocols should be encouraged and supported, as these heinous crimes require an ever-increasing international response and crackdown. I thank you.
por su declaración.
I thank Italy for their statement. We still have some speeches to hear, and so I will now suspend the meeting until this afternoon. The meeting is suspended.
Oui. C'est... One day honey, one day onions. You know, you could mix both. All right. All right, good afternoon. Just updating you on Gaza. You heard, I think you all heard Martin Griffiths' press conference earlier today in Geneva. He said that given the military operations and the pace of them, no place is safe for civilians in southern Gaza, which he says leaves our humanitarian operations and plans in tatters. But just to give you an update on what is going on, the World Food Program warns that hunger is spreading widely across Gaza and that people are growing increasingly desperate, trying to find food to feed their families. Cases of dehydration and malnutrition are rapidly increasing, according to them. Recent phone-based monitoring by World Food Program shows that between 83 and 97% of families are not consuming adequate amounts of food, and in some areas, as many as 80% of households report spending a full day and night without any food, some for as many as 10 days in the last month. The Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs reports that most patients and staff in the Kamal Adwan Hospital in Jabalia were evacuated yesterday by Gaza's Ministry of Health, and the hospital largely stopped functioning and ceased admitting new patients. This is due to the intense fighting in its vicinity, compounded by the lack of basic medical supplies, by the lack of water, the lack of food, and the lack of fuel. Currently, only 14 out of the 36 hospitals in Gaza are functional, and these only provide limited services. Among them, 2 small hospitals in the north and 12 are located in the south. They're reportedly being able to admit new patients. Meanwhile, 80 trucks carrying humanitarian supplies and 69,000 liters of fuel entered from from Egypt into Gaza yesterday. This is well below the daily average of 170 trucks and 110,000 liters of fuel that had entered during the humanitarian pause implemented between the 24th and the 30th of November. The average of 500 truckloads, including fuel, that entered every working day prior to 7 October. Our ability to receive incoming loads of aid has been significantly hampered over the last few days by several factors. These include a shortage of trucks within Gaza, with some being stranded in the middle area, which has been cut off from the south, telecommunications blackouts, and the increasing number of staff who are unable to report to the Rafah crossings due to the hostilities. Back here this morning, the Secretary General addressed the Security Council in a meeting on transnational organized crime. He said the activities of transnational organized crime takes many forms, but the ramifications are the same: weakened governance, corruption, lawlessness, open violence, death, and destruction. Illicit financial flows are not abstract figures, he added. They amount to billions of dollars of missed development aid, lost livelihood, worsening poverty. The Secretary General highlighted priorities for action. First, he said we must strengthen cooperation as the only credible path to target criminal dynamics that fuel violence and prolonged cycles of conflict. Then Mr. Guterres added that we must strengthen the rule of law, strengthening prevention and fostering inclusion. And finally, at every stage, he told council members we must remain vigilant to the ever-changing nature of organized crime, continually rethinking our approaches, both in how we work and how we cooperate with others. Khada Wali, the executive director of the UN Office of Drugs and Crime, also spoke at the meeting this morning. We shared her remarks with you. And just after the Security Council meeting, the Secretary General participated in the opening segment of the first in-person members of his advisory body on artificial intelligence. He told the members of the body that he underscored to them the significance of the interim report that they are working on will be completed by the end of the year, and how important that report will be on the global debate on AI governance, including the lead up of the Summit of the Future, which will take place in September here in New York next year. The Secretary General also emphasized that the report should put forward ambitious recommendations on how artificial intelligence can help empower immunity. The meetings will continue tomorrow. We have an update on the outcome of the high-level pledging conference for the Central Emergency Response Fund, CERF as we call it, and that meeting, as you will recall, was held yesterday. 40 donors announced a contribution of more than $419 million for 2024. This exceeds the $409 million pledged last year. So we say thank you. So far this year, CERF has allocated more than $640 million to support millions of people in need of urgent assistance in some 40 countries and territories. This includes Sudan, the response to the earthquake in Turkey and Syria, as well as Gaza. To illustrate the critical role of the fund, Martin Griffiths has allocated $4 million from the fund to Madagascar and $5 million to Zimbabwe to take action ahead of droughts that are expected to be triggered by El Nino. In Zimbabwe, the resources will also be used to respond to cholera outbreak. Thank you. Turning to the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Bintou Keita, the head of peacekeeping mission in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, expressed concern over the intensification of fighting in the country's east. She called on all parties to the conflict to diffuse tensions and for the M23 movement to immediately cease hostilities. The mission continues to work jointly with the Congolese armed forces to protect civilians in the Sake area in North Kivu, including through robust and regular patrolling. The mission is also continuing to provide protection to around 20,000 civilians who have sought refuge inside the Kinshasa UN base over the past weeks. And in South Sudan, this is what happened in South Sudan. In South Sudan, the UN mission participated today in a key meeting with the government of South Sudan and its partners on the status of the implementation of the revitalized peace agreement of 2018. The mission welcomed the recent development of the necessary unified forces to Upper Nile State, while urging the government to provide necessary funds and attention to ensure a cohesive, structured security sector that can effectively protect civilians and provide secure environment. At the meeting, the mission's Deputy Special Representative, Guang Kong, expressed concern over the reports of violence in the Abyei administrative area and Warab state, as well as fighting and mobilization in Leer and Git in Unity state. And with only 12 months to go to South Sudan's first post-independent elections, Mr. Kong encouraged the government to enter the 2024 with a renewed drive and sense of urgency to implement the peace agreement. And our friends in Geneva, the International Organization for Migration, and our friends in Geneva, the UN Refugee Agency, UNHCR, today urged for a stronger response in the Americas as 500,000 people have crossed the Darien Jungle, located in the border of Colombia and Panama this year. Both agencies warned that a worsening emergency and called for a regional, comprehensive approach founded on cooperation, founded on solidarity, and taking into account the situation of countries of origin, transit, and destination. IOM and UNHCR are providing humanitarian assistance to migrants in the region, while also working with states and civil society to identify appropriate and long-term solutions to the challenges at hand. And today is International Day of, what is today? Besides Thursday, and besides the day, it is the International Day of Civil Aviation. Somebody has been looking at their advent calendar. The purpose of this day is to help generate and reinforce worldwide awareness of the importance of international civil aviation to the social and economic development of states. You get to board first if you have a question. Oh, all right. Go ahead, Edie. Yeah, Edie's always in first class. She gets upgraded.
Thanks, Steph. The Secretary General is going to be briefing the Security Council tomorrow morning on his Article 99 letter. Can you tell us what he's been doing since the letter was sent to the Security Council? Has he been meeting with council members? Has he specifically spoken to any senior U.S. officials? Because the U.S. Deputy Ambassador made very clear on Monday that the Biden administration does not want a resolution on a humanitarian ceasefire.
I mean,
Now.
the Secretary General has been quite busy since he sent the letter, picking up the phone. He had, by my count, 7 phone calls with foreign ministers yesterday. And yes, I will share the list with you. He spoke with the foreign minister of Jordan, Mr. Ayman Safadi, with Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed Al Nahyan, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the UAE. He spoke with Sheikh Mohammed bin Jassim Al Thani, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the State of Qatar. He spoke with Mr. Sameh Shoukry, the Foreign Minister of Egypt. He spoke with Mr. Anthony Blinken, the Secretary of State of these United States. He spoke with Prince Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud, the Foreign Minister of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And finally, he spoke to David Cameron later in the evening, the Foreign Secretary of the United Kingdom and Northern Ireland. And as he makes more phone calls, we will share that with you. We will also try to share his remarks with you under embargo as early as possible. Amélie.
Still follow up on the letter. After the letter, the Israeli foreign minister accused the Secretary General of being a danger for world peace because of his call for a ceasefire. Any response to that?
Would it surprise you would it surprise you if I said that we disagree? Deji.
It's kind of a follow-up with Amelie's question, because not only the foreign minister, the ambassador of Israel again called on the Secretary General to resign immediately because of this, what he called a new moral law. Just now, you mentioned 7 foreign ministers: UK, Saudi Arabia, US, Egypt, Qatar, Jordan, and the UAE. Has the Secretary General even tried to contact some Israeli officials on his own?
As I said, the phone calls are continuing, and I will let you know as soon as I have a list of more. He has been in regular contact with President Herzog, and I would add
regular.
What I would also add is that our operational contacts with Israeli authorities are continuing on a daily basis, if not round the clock, on a political level, on an operational level, in terms of humanitarian assistance. We don't always come to an agreement, but I would say that the contacts remain highly professional in that end.
So on this regular contact with President of Israel, he didn't ask the Secretary General to resign?
No.
Okay.
I mean, but again, I don't speak for, I only speak for the Secretary General of this organization.
Yeah, I know.
Right?
I know.
And
he will
think
not.
you could expect the Secretary General to be at work tomorrow and until the end of his mandate. Madame.
Steph, the U.S. have accused the Sudanese armed force and the Rapid Support Force of having committed war crime. What is the Secretary General's thinking about that? Will action be taken? And in the DRC, is Bintou Keita leaving soon?
Well, the only thing I do know about Bintou Keita is that she is continues to be the Secretary General's special representative, with, of course, his full support. She will be here with his full support. I mean, non-verbal responses to my statements aren't shown in the transcript, but now I lost my. She's. Yes, I said what I said. And she's here, I mean, she's currently here in New York. She's briefing the Security Council, I think, next week, and she will be speaking to you after she briefs the Security Council. So feel free to ask her any question. On the horrific suffering of civilians in Sudan that we've seen, and that, frankly, that the UN system has been talking about since the beginning, what we've seen in Darfur, the sexual-based violence. I think we have been extremely loud at condemning it, at calling for accountability, and there will need to be accountability. And we are, I know different parts of the organization are continuing to investigate it, and we will continue to denounce it and bring it to light as much as we can. Stefano, and then Toshi, and then Ibtissam.
Thank you, Stefan. One is a question and a follow-up. The follow-up first. About the letter, why it was so necessary to say that the Secretary General never done this in his mandate? I mean, since 2017, when he actually did it. Yes, he didn't mention Article 99 in the letter, but he did send.
Why did I feel the need to mention it?
No, why was so necessary yesterday and in general give this, because I saw the newspaper around the world, they all say for the first time the Secretary General that
because
did.
It's true.
What was, when he sent a letter to the Security Council about Myanmar, for example, wasn't that under Article 99?
I mean, we sent you the list of all the letters that have been sent, I would say, within the spirit sometimes of Article 99. The letter that he sent in Myanmar, and I'm no doubt you've read it or you could read, does not specifically mention Article 99. This one is the first one that mentions Article 99. So that's why we thought it was necessary to point that out.
Okay, but I understand maybe your point. It's just that out there they think that the first time that the security...
Because it is.
So the Secretary...
I mean...
Well... Okay, I don't. I just don't understand because it was successful
you read
in the
that
past.
letter he wrote on Myanmar. There are two digits that are not there, and that's the number 9, and then followed by the number 9 again. So,
but he just
this letter mentions 99. So it is the first time he's actually mentioned that article.
Can I just say, it's like if I want to express my free opinion,
you can always express.
And if I do. One time, if I don't mention the First Amendment, it's different. No, it's the same thing.
I mean, listen, I'm not your editor, and all I can say is good thinking.
But then the question, the U.S. mission has been repeating just a few days ago that they prefer the Security Council stay out of the crisis at the moment because they want diplomacy on the ground. Apparently, they say that actually it's better because the Security Council actually can complicate the situation. So now we have the letter of Secretary General, of course. So and I asked this before, did the Secretary General had a direct contact with the U.S. government, and especially in thinking to the White House, the President, and that was the motivation, to convince the U.S. to actually, it's the Security Council that has to take care of the problem.
I don't know, Stefan. I don't know how to answer your question. All I can tell you is I think that the Secretary General's expectations of the Security Council in living up to its responsibilities under the Charter of the United Nations is very clear in the letter, in which he mentions Article 99 for the first time. Toshi and then Ibtissam.
Thank you, Steph. I have a question on a different topic, whether you like it or not.
Please.
A question on AI Advisory Board, the first
yeah.
in-person meeting. Do you know how many times they held virtual meetings before?
They met once. They met an inaugural meeting, which was virtual,
Right.
and this is the first in-person one.
So they have like 2 meetings?
Yes,
in total?
today and tomorrow.
But why didn't you make it public? You know, I ask this because you have like 39 members, and I don't think you can include like a whole members' opinions in the report within like a few months. But if you make it public, it could contribute to the future discussions.
I mean, listen, you could argue it both ways, I think. It is also important for experts to be able to have open and discussions in order to come to a consensus on a document. Listen, we all, I think everyone, let me put it this way, most people may say different things in front of a camera when the camera is not on. It doesn't mean that, I mean, these are all people who are highly respected in their field. They are free to express themselves in interviews and whatever, but I think it's more conducive for the first time they meet that they be able to have an open and frank discussion and argue and disagree in a closed-door meeting in order to produce a report that will be made public.
Yeah, well understood. But we are approaching to the end of this year. So do you know, like, do you have a vague idea of a schedule of the releasing the document so that I can take a winter
I will
break?
try to get you a more precise answer so we can all prepare our ends of the year.
Thanks.
Ibtisam, please.
Thank you. A quick follow-up first on Sudan. You talked about the sexual violence and the necessity of investigating. Who's going to investigate? Is there anybody in the UN bodies that is investigating? And then also in Sudan, regarding the personal envoy, did he start, Mr. Al-Maamri, did he start his work, his efforts?
I don't have an update. I will check on an update on his work, but he's officially started. Well, let me just get an update on his work. I should have had one, and I will get you a more precise answer on, because I think I know which part of the UN is investigated, but I want to double check before I say so in front of a camera.
Okay, so my question also on Gaza. The Israeli army arrested today tens or maybe hundreds of Palestinian men, among others my colleague, the Al-Arabi Al-Jadid correspondent in Gaza, Dia Al-Kahlout. It is not known where they took him or his family members, but also other Palestinian men. I don't know if you saw the pictures. A lot of them were forced to take off their clothes, stripped naked. And Al-Kahlout is not the first Palestinian who has been arrested since October. As you know, there is more than 75 Palestinians who were killed, journalists, I mean. But also more than, I think, if I'm not mistaken, more than 44 Palestinian journalists who were arrested since October 7th. 41 of them are in the West Bank and 3 in Gaza. So do you have any comments on the pictures that's circulating around the media and specifically on the arrest of Dia Al-Kahlout? Thank you.
You know, I think the pictures we saw this morning are very concerning because people... everyone has a basic right to human dignity, not to, and the pictures and the way people are treated is very concerning. We have also, and will continue to underscore the risk that journalists are taking in covering the current conflict. Many of your colleagues have paid with their lives in Gaza, and it is incumbent that information as to the whereabouts and the reason behind the detention of journalists be made public as quickly as possible. Edith.
Thank you, Steph. I believe you said that the report by the Artificial Intelligence panel is due by the end of the year?
Yes, ma'am.
is it going to go to the Secretary General, or is it going to be made public? And if it isn't going to be made public,
Why not? Very valid questions, and we will answer them as quickly as we can. Alan.
Sorry, Stefan, thank you. Today, Russian State Duma has adopted the address to the UN and to international parliaments, calling them to join the investigation against Ukraine's crimes against minors. Have you received it, and what would be your reaction?
I'm not aware, but I will check. I will check on the letter. Okay. Nabil, please.
Thank you, Stefan. So this is not the first time that the UN personnel are targeted in conflicts. So has the UN received compensations before in any conflict before where some of their employees?
I need to go back to a historical record on that. Okay. Monica, all yours. Thank you all. See you mañana.
Steph's still online. Steph.
Oh, sorry.
You always forget your online fans.
Oh, well, if you turn on your camera, maybe.
Oh, you don't want to see me today.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Maggie.
Steph, thank you, hon. An IDF spokesperson said yesterday that they're not limiting aid into Gaza. The spokesperson said that they're checking trucks, but they're not the only ones who check the trucks. It's not just Israel. And about the potential opening of Kerem Shalom and Eretz crossings, the spokesperson said that Hamas is continuing to fire on those two crossings until now. So can you address those accusations?
Sure. On Kerem Shalom, there are discussions ongoing. Martin Griffiths, I think, addressed that in his press conference about 2 hours ago. And so he and his colleagues are in the lead on that, but there are discussions that are ongoing. Kerem Shalom is by tradition the kind of crossing for commercial goods, so there has the infrastructure to do the inspections, and it would make things a lot quicker. It would save time, it would save money, it would save fuel to do that, and it would enable us to increase the volume. The challenge about the humanitarian aid access is the fact that there's fighting going on, right? That there's not enough fuel going in. All those things hamper our humanitarian operations. Okay.
But the spokesperson said that they're not limiting what you can take in, including fuel. Is that correct?
There are agreements between the parties about what can go in and the volume that can go in. Thank you.
Thank you, Steph, and good afternoon, everyone. Today we'll have 4 notes for you, and we will be done. The President of the General Assembly, His Excellency Mr. Dennis Francis, will undertake an official visit to the state of Qatar from the 9th to the 11th of December. The PJ will take part in the Doha Forum 2023 under the theme Building Shared Futures. President Francis will hold separate bilateral meetings with His Highness Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, Emir of the State of Qatar. The PJ will also be received by His Excellency Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdulrahman bin Jassim Al Thani, the Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs of the State of Qatar. On Sunday, President Francis will deliver a statement at the opening panel with the Prime Minister of Qatar and heads of state and government. Navigating a new era, revitalizing multilateralism for global changes will be the theme of a lecture by the PGA to students at Qatar University. Whilst in Doha, Mr. Francis will visit the UN House before he returns to New York on Monday morning. The PGA will depart from New York on Friday, which is tomorrow. He is being accompanied by 2 political advisors as well as a communication advisor, and travel costs are being covered by the OPGA's regular budget and by the state of Qatar. And of course, you get updates from us. President Francis is deeply concerned about the political situation in Guinea-Bissau and the latest wave of violence by national forces, following the dissolution of the country's parliament and reports of threats and intimidation. The PJ is appealing for calm and the resumption of dialogue. Mr. Francis said that all parties have to refrain from the use of force and promote the constitutional order, peace, and stability. And the PJ has presided this morning over the 45th plenary meeting on the reports of the Special Political and Decolonization Committee, 4th Committee, and the 6th Committee. The General Assembly took action on several items of the agenda, including assistance in mine action, effects of atomic radiation, economic and other activities which affect the interests of the peoples of the non-self-governing territories, revitalization of the work of the GA, among other draft resolutions, and more information on our website. And as we speak, the PGA is getting ready to take part in the event to celebrate World Soil Day, which is marked by the UN every 5th of December. President Francis will deliver opening remarks at the invitation of the Permanent Mission of Thailand to the UN. And this year, the theme is Soil and Water, a Source of Life, and aims, of course, to highlight the importance and the relationship between soil and water in achieving sustainable and resilient agri-food systems. Currently, 33% of soils are degraded, and the regenerations of eroded soil can be an arduous process requiring up to 1,000 years to produce a mere 2 to 3 centimeters of replenished earth. Last but not least, this afternoon, for your diaries, the General Assembly and the Economic and Social Council, ECOSOC, will hold a joint thematic event on landlocked developing countries. And this meeting is convened, you may remember, by PJ Dennis Francis and the President of the ECOSOC, Her Excellency Ms. Paula Narvaez. This joint event is being held under the theme Road to Kigali, News Program of Action for Landlocked Developing Countries as an accelerator of the implementation of the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. And these discussions today will provide input to the 3rd United Nations Conference on the Landlocked Developing Countries, which is scheduled for June 2024 in Rwanda. So we're talking about next year. And this is everything we have for today. So why, okay, Deji here, and then after Deji, I go to the screen, and then I come back to Stefano. Deji, go ahead. How are you today?
Hi, good. Monica, we saw the Israeli officials attacking Secretary General, attacking UNRWA, attacking UN Women, Mr. Wenesland, Ms. Ling Hastings. How much does President of the General Assembly worried about these attacks on the damage of reputation and functioning of the United Nations?
Well, first of all, these are not news to the PJ. You will remember that he expressed his opinion about this when it happened first in several interviews when he was asked. And he talked at length about the relationship that he has with the Secretary General. The Secretary General has been working very well with the PJ. They have an excellent relationship. They talk about this issue and other relevant issues to the UN. And this PJ, Deji, as you know, he is a very seasoned diplomat. He firmly believes in dialogue, in reaching consensus through conversation, through dialogue, not through arguments and attacks. And he believes that we have to remain civil in our exchanges.
So,
thank you.
So has the PGA contact with the Israeli officials to convey this message not to have attacks but conversations?
The PJ has had exchanges with the Israeli officials, but also with officials, or with representatives from the Palestinians from the very beginning. And he has been looking
and working to serve as a bridge, as a facilitator of dialogue, because only dialogue will, and a political outcome, of course, decision, of course, will help out in this situation right now. Not more tension, of course. I go to the screen if somebody is on the screen, because I don't want to, I don't see any hands. So, Stefano, you have the mic. Go ahead.
Thank you, Monica. We find out that the Secretary General used a power, the Article 99 of the Charter, for the first time. Is anything that the President of the General Assembly, in his last 7 months, few months that he has left, there is any article out there in the Charter that maybe is thinking to use on those crises that there are at the moment at the UN?
The President of the General Assembly is very focused on the work of the General Assembly. And the General Assembly has spoken, as we say in English, loud and clear. There is a resolution on this particular issue that needs to be implemented. Member states got together, decided, spoke very clearly on what they consider to be necessary to be implemented right now. And the President remains and stands by that. There is a resolution that needs to be implemented. Yeah. Anything else? If not, I'll say thank you so much. I appreciate you staying. Tomorrow, that's our last briefing for this week. I'll see you on Monday. Thanks.
She says she was lucky, but she feels there ought to be more companies for whom people's future counts more than their past.